So I'm going to talk a little bit about some use cases that we're working on with customers today. But first of all, I think my opinion on where we are, I think, is there's an interesting picture online, which some of you may have seen. It's essentially a picture of math teachers when the calculator was first invented, protesting against the use of calculators. And I think AI represents is a kind of a similar comparison. I think it's definitely going to change things, but it's going to potentially change things for the better. And I think it's not necessarily a case of it's going to take our jobs. It's going to take, it's going to take everything over. And there's a lot of stuff all over LinkedIn and the news about how it's going to replace everything. And if you're not on the bus, you're under the bus and whatever. But I think it's really a tool that's going to enable us to do more and do that more better. So I think that's kind of where I stand, and I'm very much kind of looking at what's going to happen. I think at the moment, a lot of the stuff you see out there is like lots of people talking about generative AI, which is it's one area of AI. And as we've kind of seen, it's great and it's doing some really interesting stuff, but it's definitely not perfect. So I think it will be interesting to see where that goes. But in terms of what we're doing at Bytes today, we are already working with customers on some really interesting projects, and I'm just going to talk through a couple of those use cases at the moment. And really the idea here is just to get you kind of thinking about, you might not immediately think that there's a use case for you within your company, but we can work with you across the spectrum to look at what we can do and the art of the possible. So I'm going to start with the second and the third one here because the first one's my favourite, so I'm going to save that till last. So we've worked with an oil rig maintenance company. So this is an interesting project. So essentially, you've got oil rigs out in the ocean. They have lots of stuff under the ocean. So what these companies do, they send down the drones to basically do analysis and video recordings of the conditions under the water. What we're then doing is analysis on the video to look for things like rust, to look for things like open hatches and latches. So all that stuff can be done automatically by the AI technology that's in use. We've got another use case here, so facial recognition within images. This is a really interesting one because this particular customer didn't have any ability to deliver. They had an idea and they came to Bytes and they said, this is what we want to do, but we don't know how to do it and we haven't got the resources to do it. So this is a project that's everything from art of the possible to architectural design to the actual development of the code for this application and then the subsequent deployment on AWS and integration of all those AWS services. So it's a really interesting project and it kind of highlights that even if you've got an idea and you're not sure how to execute on it, Bytes can help you through the whole process. The particular application itself, it's kind of a novel use case. It's essentially doing facial recognition on images that people upload of strangers, and those people can sign up and find images of themselves. So it's sort of aimed at, I say, wannabe celebrities, I guess. So if people can essentially find pictures of themselves, post them on their social media accounts. But it's a really interesting use case in the background. Now, my favourite one here is the body-worn camera footage because it uses a whole host of different technologies to deliver the final solution. So as a police force, we've all seen the various snippets that occasionally come out on the news where someone's done something they shouldn't have done and it was caught on body footage. But obviously, as part of that, there's tens of thousands of hours of footage that is produced from all these officers who wear the body cameras. It's an incredibly long and arduous task to manually go through that footage, and a lot of that footage is incredibly uneventful. Nothing really happens. But what this force wanted to do was essentially investigate that footage more to find out whether there was anything happening in those uneventful bits that shouldn't be. So we're talking things like use of swear words, racial slurs, things that might not immediately appear to be eventful information, but actually is something that's really important to highlight. So in this example, what they've done is they've taken the video, they've transcribed the audio from the video to text. So that enables us to do search and things to find racial slurs, to find swear words and other information that shouldn't be in there. But also what you can then subsequently do is things like sentiment analysis. So you can look at that text and you can say, is this an aggressive interaction? Is this, a pleasant interaction? What is this an upsetting interaction? So you can start to look really into that information more and find out exactly what it is that's going on in there. So there's some really interesting use cases that we're working on with customers across a number of different areas. But I think we're obviously in very unknown territory. And there isn't an off-the-shelf solution, really, that you can buy that's going to integrate this into your organization. Yeah, there are hundreds of apps popping up all over the place at the moment that will give you prompts, that will give you AI-powered presentations, that will do, poorly dubbed video of somebody presenting. Sorry, Matt. But I think really what I'm trying to say is it's a very consultative approach that's needed here. You're not going to buy something off the shelf, and everyone here is going to have a different use case and a different organization and a different way that they're going to want to use this technology. So, and as I kind of talked about in some of the examples, Bytes can take you through from very much art of the possible. So not really sure what we can do today, whiteboarding sessions, talking to the pre-sales guys and to the solution experts around, what could we do in this area, all the way through to taking that idea into something a bit more solid, like an architectural design or a plan, all the way through to development and potentially deployment as well, and ongoing maintenance. So it's a very consultative approach that's needed. Nobody really knows where it's going to go, exactly, what they can make use for now, and I think we've got to make sure that we're doing something useful with it. I think there's a lot of pressure to do stuff, but there's no point doing something if it's not going to add value to your business or your customers. So I think it's really important to dive into what those use cases are, take a step back from the noise, and figure out exactly what the right way forward is. So I'm going to talk a little bit about AWS, because that's my particular area of the business. So we're obviously an AWS advanced consulting partner. We're very established, very capable, and have lots of use cases under our belt. All those projects I just mentioned there are AWS projects. AWS are market leading in AI, machine learning, and data analytics services, which we haven't talked too much about. But these are services that have been around for a long time. They're not new. There's a lot of stuff that's obviously coming out at the moment. But these things have been around for quite a long time. And they provide a really good foundation for you to take a lot of the legwork out for you. So a lot of those use cases I talked about, you've got things like recognition for video analysis, you've got comprehend for sentiment analysis, you've got services for text-to-speech, you've got services for speech-to-text. All that stuff is already there, and these models are already trained, they're already available. Obviously, we all know about ChatGPT, OpenAI, and that stuff, but there's lots of other models and lots of other services that can be used to enable your organizations. So, as I talked a little bit about, there's a lot of services on AWS that are available, whatever they might be. So, data lakes, data visualization, one of the things that AWS has got, which you don't actually hear people talk about too much, but I really like this, is Amazon's QuickSight product, which is their BI graphical analysis tool. It has a feature called QuickSight Q, which basically means you can ask in plain language, you can ask questions of your data. So if you've got graphs in there about your sales data or your performance data, and you've got a user who isn't familiar with how to use BI tools, you can say, show me the sales data for last quarter, and it will give you a graph of the sales data for last quarter. I think this is a really interesting use case because it's something that actually I can see the value that this will add to our organizations, and it's really quick to get value out of something like that. And we've also got code productivity, so Code Whisperer, something if we've got any developers or developer teams here, is really interesting. So we've seen probably things like this with Copilot and various other services, but Code Whisperer, plug it into Visual Studio, into various other AI, into various other development tools, and it will just massively speed up your development process. So kind of as Simon said, it might not necessarily majorly impact your experienced staff, but it certainly will help your newer or less experienced or mid-level staff be way more productive with what they're doing. So I think really the message here is there's a lot of different services out there. There's a lot of different things that you can use to accelerate your journey to doing stuff with AI and in the cloud. You don't have to, it can seem like a daunting journey, and I think even for me, like none of us are, we haven't been doing this for years because it's not been around for years. So I think it's very it's difficult, and it's easy to feel worried about how you keep up with things. But I think there are a lot of services out there. There's a lot of ways that you can use these to accelerate your journey. So I think, yeah, to summarise, really, it's a consultative approach that we can provide. We'll work closely with you. We're really interested in what those use cases are. We've got experience across lots of different sectors and organisations. And yeah, Bytes can definitely be your partner in this.